got some serious thrashers from back in the day in '84. We'll get them up here to show you how to do it. Take a few lessons from the masters, the old motherfuckers.
Man, it's mayhem. It's controlled mayhem.
You got to put earplugs in. That's what I suggest you to do.
As far as we were concerned, we were going to do it ourselves and outside of the regular system.
Everybody hates us. Nobody will ever give us a record contract. Why don't we just put on a record ourselves?
I wasn't here long enough. Apparently the skinheads were a problem back in the day, as they call it.
So where's your equipment? And I said, well, we didn't bring any. We're hoping to borrow some. And the guy said, are all you Canadians this fucking stupid? I am Joe Shithead Keithley from DOA. That's me. And I consent to be in your video. I first heard about hardcore in a magazine in San Francisco, and the writer was talking about kind of this West Coast punk rock, like non-compromising. And then we saw The Damned on TV, and that was a revelation. The fans were like wrecking the place they were playing in, the venue. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of fun. I'd like to be in a band where people did that, right?
My name's Ron.
That's a Celtic Shield.
Probably in late 78, 79, I met a bunch of kids from a band called Scum. From then on, that was pretty much my life for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Beer-fueled, urban angst. I don't think it could happen now. I don't think it could have happened 10 years earlier. I think it was the time and it was the place, and it happened.
The hardcore virus just spread across the country, I guess. Like in a zombie movie, you know? Everybody starts biting each other higher. I'm Robbo, one of 2 guitarists in Genetic Control.
Zabbo, I yell a lot.
The raw, sheer aggression of it, you know? There wasn't anything else out there that sounded like that. I mean, the airwaves were flooded with bands like, you know, Fleetwood Mac and David Bowie, and then when the hardcore thing happened in the early 80s, I mean, kablamo, you know, that was it.
To me, the original definition of like hardcore punk was, you know, non-compromising, think for yourself. And our manager came up with an idea. He says, hey, why don't we call the album Hardcore 81? You might say DOA are the progenitors of hardcore.
Hardcore was not just the music, it was the lifestyle. We all had no jobs, 99% of us were living on welfare, and tired and pissed off with the system. And I think a lot of us just at the time felt like we had something to say, and we actually got up and said it.
Hardcore can apply to many things. There's hardcore metal, hardcore punk, hardcore pornography, hardcore snowboarding and skateboarding. Hardcore, I think, is an attitude of how you approach whatever it is that you're passionate about. A lot of those early bands that created that sound didn't want to just be called punk because they were something different.
My name is Allison. Many years ago, I was a punk rocker, and I still believe I am now. There was aggressivity with the beat that in all honesty, I totally acknowledged and felt, and it just made you feel alive. Hello! There's my fans over there.
Hi, my name's Don Pompeo. I'm 45 years old. I used to play in the Asexuals. And this is my story. How's that?
Oh, good.
I was used to going to heavy metal shows, and I went to a punk rock show, and yeah, the audience participation was really fun, and the way the band talked to the audience, made me as an audience member feel like I was part of the show.
Hey, here's a piece of hash.
Well, what do you
My
think
name's
when you see a punk when you're walking down the street?
Oh, I run the other way. That's what you want me to say, you see? I don't normally listen to punk music, let's put it this way, because it may be loud at times, but I think some of the lyrics are pretty decent. If you take the lyrics apart from the music, there is a message there.
How can I frame this, man? I'm just going. The lyrics were crucial, and they had to make sense, and they had to kind of like shine a light into the dark places and expose the negative aspects. You didn't find too many hardcore songs about little fluffy kittens and things like that unless they were getting axed. I don't know if you were at that gig. Eric from My Dog Popper had a little wind-up dog one night, and he put lighter fluid on it and put it on stage in flames, and it was hopping across the flames, and there's stage doing somersault in flames. Yeah. I miss Popper shows. Popper shows were incredible.
Begging on the street right now. If you try to do it just to pick up girls or to try to get a shitload of money, good luck.
At the time, in the late 70s, the music industry was completely dominated by the corporate machines. If you didn't have a major recording contract, your music was not getting paid. And when punk started out, bands would start their own record labels. They'd start their own fanzines, their own record stores, their own nightclubs. Like, bands were doing absolutely everything on their own without any support whatsoever from the music business as we knew it.
In 1984, Cargo Records, they put together a compilation of Montreal bands.
Just across the street from here, actually.
Where?
Right across the street on Saint Laurent, about a block down. We recorded it in this hippie's living room. The drum set was in his kitchen. You know, the guitar amp was by the washing machine. There was no vocal booth, no isolation booths, just a couple of microphones, and he just said play.
Theme song.
Musically, the first thing I did in Montreal was I was the manager of Scum. One of my jobs was going around and trying to find venues where the band could play, because nobody in Montreal wanted to have punk bands play in their clubs. It was, the punks had a bad reputation, people were afraid, you know.
Mon nom c'est Jannick Langlais, je suis présidente, booking manager pour les Catacombes. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. C'est ça, on est situé à Montréal, Québec. La plupart des shows sont plus majoritairement punk ou metal, old school. Puis on s'est battu fort pour l'avoir, parce que surtout dans ces années-là, il n'y avait vraiment rien pour les punks, puis on était vraiment discriminés, on se faisait traiter, on se faisait traiter de tous les noms, puis le monde était vraiment comme pas informé sur la culture punk. Puis depuis, ben, on a fait bien de la sensibilisation, fait des séances d'information aussi que j'ai fait personnellement dans des cégeps, des universités, du monde en travail social pour informer le monde, sensibiliser le monde, de dire que c'est pas parce qu'on est un look punk ou fucké qu'on n'est pas capable de rien faire dans la vie. Fait que je pense.
In high school, I think there was like 4 of us at our school, and we were like the atrocious people, and we had so much fun.
When you see a lot of these bands. We wanted to actually see them in a club with a proper PA instead of like a shitty squat where the cops were more than likely to show up and stop the thing even before it happened. And we were pissed with that because we wanted to see the band. We didn't give a shit.
I found a place on St. Lawrence Street. It was called Visage, and after putting a show on there with Scum, I asked the guy if I could do more shows. And after booking local bands, I thought I would try by booking out-of-town bands. And I, basically put the word out on the street that we had a venue in town where we could book hardcore and punk bands.
And finally, having a club got all those people in the same place and actually got something going. And we started calling it the Hardcore Club for want of anything else, and that's what we put on the posters. We knew a guy who worked at a printing company downtown, and he was doing big printing business for lawyers and accountants, but he liked what we were doing, so he'd give us a deal and print our stuff like right off the bat as soon as we bring it in. Previously, we knew most of the people who were coming to the shows, or knew who they were friends of, or things like that, and it was all pretty tight. And after that, it just exploded.
Hardcore Monday nights at the Cargo, that was some of the best times ever. We had people who were outside of the scene, casual passerbys would hear the noise from the Cargo and trying to figure out what was going on. We'd come up and some of them would get hooked and some of them would walk away.
Zabo said it's no problem, come down, so we went down, and Jerry and I were like one of the first guys with long hair to go to some of these shows, and really liked it. We liked the energy and everything. Some of the skinheads weren't too happy because we had such long hair, but other than that, great scene, great guys, great girls, no problem at all.
I moved to Montreal. I lived in Toronto and it was really boring for the scene there. Not many shows. There's shows, people don't come out as much, but it's always something going on here. Smaller bands. It's cool.
Yeah, there was a good scene in Montreal. I think the first time we went there, Zabo put the show on and it was with Scum. The sound, I would say that it developed like a little bit later. There was punk rock bands in Vancouver first, to my knowledge. So we weren't really that aware of the bands in Montreal before we got there. Now, people in Montreal might say, well, we weren't really that aware of the bands in Vancouver before, so whatever. I mean, it's not a pissing contest.
Oh yes, I lived in the BBC, ate in the BBC. BBC means the Blurry Beach Club, and that's pretty much was the epicenter of the hardcore scene for quite a while.
There were a lot of places, I think in North America, that had these sort of central houses, if you will, where all the punks would congregate and hang out.
It was kind of like a hardcore commune. We ate together, nobody did the dishes together. It was your typical scene. The only thing in the fridge was beer, if there was any beer in the fridge. Usually it was just empty because everybody was hiding their beer throughout the house.
We had a PA in the house, we had guitar and bass rigs and instruments and all this kind of stuff, and one night we came back after something and we're like, well, fuck it, let's start playing. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, who cares? Nobody cares anyway, so let's just start jamming. And that's kind of how this band started, My Dog Popper.
It was a real party atmosphere, kind of where the bands could cut their teeth playing in front of an audience before they actually got on stage.
We met Dave Javix at one of the shows and really got along with him, and Dave was cool because he knew we were trying to start a band, but he said, just for the hell of it, let's start a band, like either, let's call it the Mental Pukes, the Retarded Assholes, or Dead Brain Cells.
DBC, when DBC was getting together, Dave Javix was the original singer with Phil and Ed, and then that didn't work out, and I started a band with Dave Javix, and that didn't work out.
What was that band called?
Moron Majority. And that was as close to, I guess, the punk rock experience as I got.
Yeah, unfortunately, Javix passed away like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that was a great loss to the punk community. I don't know.
I knew Dave very, very well, but I think that's part of life. some people I hadn't talked to for a long time, but that news brought some people together, you know.
To get a shot of the Biff Deck. Did you get a shot of the Biff Deck? That's the place where it all went down. We'd been on the road for about 2 months or so, and we'd started to get kind of, you know, homesick and miss our girlfriends and stuff. So we blew off the last few shows with the intention of coming back home and being heroes. And so we drove all the way back up to Montreal and went to the Biff Deck. And people said things like, "Oh, did you go somewhere?" And that's when we realized we should have stayed on the road. But that's a typical, that's usually what happens. That's life.
I bumped back and forth from Montreal and Toronto. And Montreal had a much better scene going. Toronto was very closed and I mean, they had the big bands coming by, but not Montreal. There just seemed to be kind of a camaraderie with, you know, different scenes that wanted to support one another.
Tried to be a very positive scene. That was, you know, the intention that we ran our own shows, we policed our own shows, we put money aside in case something got broken so we could pay the club owners right away. Funny story about Zab from Gen Con and the DK show in Toronto. Trying to get on stage all night. He finally gets on stage and comes flying off the stage and there's nobody, and he hit the concrete floor. We were outside afterwards and Zab's like, "Oh man, my arm's broken." Lutef walked up to a picket fence, kicked a couple of pickets in, broke him in half, put them on Mike's arm, taped them all up and said, "Okay, now you've got to split and stop whining." Thrashing for us was, I guess, what people would call moshing right now. Unbounded exuberation. Just call it the pit, the thrash pit. There was no violence in the pit. You'd bash each other's heads and inadvertently poke each other in the eye.
It was almost like an honor system. People were like moshing or thrashing around in a circle. Somebody was to trip or fall or get knocked down. Like the next person would just pick them up, you know?
A lot of times in the beginning, there was only the guys thrashing, and they're just like, "Oh, what the fuck's with that?" It evolved slowly that there was like more and more women thrashing, and I remember Lorianne had a shirt she made. It's like manly, yes, but I like it too.
The first time I ever saw punk rock and heavy metal together was at a Motorhead show at the Spectrum. And that would have been the late 80s. And Motorhead was playing. And there was these punk rock guys.
We got to load in for them, we got to hang out with them, and we got into the gig for free. And then there were 12 punks in the middle of 2,000 hardcore metalheads.
And they were dancing around, and heavy metal guys, of course, don't dance. They get as close to the stage as they can and headbang. And they were getting pretty pissed off by these punk rock guys that were dancing around, and then a fight was about to break out.
And Lemmy points at us from the stage and he goes, "See those guys? They're not afraid of you. They know you hate them, but they're here to see us." It was, we're all standing there going like, "Okay, thanks a lot, buddy."
To me, that was Lemmy speaking as an ambassador of peace.
Yo. Yep. I sang for a band called the Mindless Idiots with a Z. That's pretty punk rock when you intentionally spell something wrong. From a point of view of somebody that was into hardcore and punk rock in the beginning, and I'm not a hateful person, I don't hate anybody, but I remember you know, rock and roll dudes with crazy ass long hair, 6 dudes in a Camaro chasing you down, and if they caught you, they'd beat you to death or hospitalize you. A fucking year and a half later, now they're coming to the shows and they're getting booked on the show, you know, they're getting booked in the lineups and stuff, and it's just like, punk rock was very about expressing yourself and just letting that expression out to the audience or onto the record or whatever. The speed metal things seemed like they were just trying too hard, you know.
My theory is what happens that a whole pile of punks around the world were all doing like a lot of meth, and not simultaneously, but over a period of a few years, they kind of really got into Motorhead, and hardcore got heavier and nastier than it had been in the original days.
And I remember that show, I noticed a big difference because it was just, people were just friggin' kicking and like scrambling and hitting. It was like, but you want to hurt somebody. And that was one of the last shows that I went to for like quite a long time.
I got out of Montreal. Honestly, I developed a really serious drug habit, and I had to get the hell out of town. My life changed so much after I got on heroin. And I did a lot of reprehensible things. It was a struggle. I was on and off heroin for quite a long time, and in 1990, 91, I finally managed to kick the habit and have been clean for the last 20 years. So did I go that way because I was exposed to it in that scene, or would have I gone that way anyway? I don't know. It was like every scene. You had, you know, everything from people who just drank to people who drank and did speed.
People sniffed glue. They, you know, it was a much poorer environment. Punks didn't have a lot of money.
Poverty breeds revolution and crime. Where we started out as revolutionaries, you know, we went to do this big gig, and there was a protest downtown, and I actually had the plug pulled on the band because the CSIS and RCMP in the audience were told the organizers that they were going to shut them down because I was inciting to riot. But I just, you know, I was just telling people just to go down to where Reagan and Mulrooney were and let them know how dissatisfied they were with what was going on.
We weren't really mature enough to understand how to work democratically and how to respect each other, so it became very difficult towards the end to be in the band. We ended the band just so that we didn't really have to spend any time together, which is probably a major reason for most bands breaking up. They get tired of having to be with people, and they can't tolerate the other person, so they just call it quits.
I made mistakes during the song, and so did you. So what? When you're betting on me, I'm going to respond. Every action causes a reaction. This is becoming very annoying now. You can stop and it'd be great.
I quit the band when I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant. We were going to have a kid, and so now I have a daughter who's 16. So that's how long ago I quit the band. As I get older, you know, it gets tougher to live like that.
I think it's a mind frame that you have that you don't necessarily grow out of. You just grow your hair and wear nicer clothes. You pay your bills rather than panhandle for them. You know, it's you throw up, you go home instead of passing out on the floor.
This is our 25th anniversary now, so if you figure even if we were 15 when we started, you got to assume we're all at least 40 now. And you know, when you get older, you start to appreciate, you know, different things in life, like this reunion. We do this for fun.
It's 5 to 9.
I cannot get enough water in my body to quench the thirst.
I know it's our punishment. Those who drink must be punished the next day. If you have the balls to continue after that, you deserve your own fate.
Because I'm taller. I know. I'll lift it here. Hold on.
She's going to do her best to try to hook us up as much as she can, right? But to a point.
Okay. Oh, so what time does your sound guy get here?
I didn't know why. This is the fun part of playing in a band.
Hey Rob, I went this paper. Did you? Oh, I found a spot.
Hey, yeah, hey. Are we at the right volumes today?
Probably the thing that I enjoy the most out of all the years of being in punk rock is just being able to return to the stage and just play for the love of the songs.
You know, we're going to be playing with good friends of ours, the Restarts. We're coming in from London, England. It should be good. It should be reminiscent of you know, playing in old clubs, like with a stage at the very end, and everybody's like cramped together, sweat dripping off the walls, folks going nuts in the audience, and we're going nuts on stage. And I'm sure it's going to be a really great time.
All right, folks, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, come closer. There is no danger in the mosh pit. But before we get started, since this is our silver anniversary, our 25th motherfucking anniversary, thank you very much for being here. This is like our personal party, and you are our personal guests. We'll be getting up close, personal, and very fucking drunk. Call it bye-bye. When you're better than friends, yeah. It's just a joke to them. But I'll never hate. You provide such an environment. Makes it keep so bad, yeah. Every night I'm This is our song, but it's not. It was written by Minor Threat, greatest fucking hardcore band of all time.
Montreal is a big center for that. There's still that kind of music is going on, and I mean, You'll see kids here tonight that look like they stepped right out of 1984. And I love that. When I'm driving around in town, when I see kids like that, it's like, all right, it's not just still going on, but it's going on in a way that I had no idea was going to happen.
I'm Tom Baum from Broken Culture. My dad, he's Robbo from Genetic Control. We are a ska punk kind of grindcore band. Honestly, I've met a lot of kids from Toronto that are all fun and that, but I just find Montreal, it's the party city, man. It's fucking, everyone should see a Montreal punk show at least once, man. It's fucking amazing.
You know, back then you had only like 3 categories of music: disco, rock, and punk. Now it's so huge now. There's so many different kind of music that it's okay to like Sex Pistols and Motley Crue. Back then, someone would have kicked your ass, but today it's okay. And I think it's better like that.
Je suis quand même assez ouverte d'esprit. Plus que je vieillis, plus qu'on s'ouvre d'esprit. Fait que j'écoute quand même aussi pas mal de rock and roll, un peu de sludge, doom, un peu comme Fu Manchu, Saint Vitus. Personnellement, après 12 ans, je pense que ça a porté fruit de se battre.
12 ans.
Ouais, c'est un peu long.
And that's what I would tell anybody now, is fucking get out and do something. Don't just wait for it to come to you. If you get an opportunity, do it. Even if it ends up sucking, you know, so you did it and you throw it over the shoulder. Because every once in a while you take a chance on something, you do something you wouldn't normally do, and it comes up fucking aces.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it. I'm glad that I was part of it. I've got long-lasting, lifetime friendships. I've got music that's recorded that's immortal.
Hey, how are you? Long time no see.
Oh, it looks awesome inside you. You know what? You might not see somebody for 20 years, but once you've shared something with them, you just pick up where you left off, and you know, there's no judgment. It's total acceptance and laughter and fun.
We could afford color. Oh my God! Love the dude, man.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was a good scene. It really was. When everything was clicking, yeah, it was a really, really good scene. I miss the friendships that I had, but like, you know,